Welcome to A Canadian Investing in the U.S., a podcast and YouTube channel focused on Canadians buying real estate with host Glenn Sutherland.
Welcome to a new episode of A Canadian Investing in the U.S. with Glenn Sutherland. This week, my guest or repeat guest is Joe Evangelisti. So I had Joe on the show 2-3 years ago. Actually, I had you on the show before I met you in person.
Right.
Back on episode 170. If you like this one, go back and check the other one out. But I had Joe on before I really knew who Joe was. And so it's a little bit of a different conversation, but actually getting to know Joe, it was awesome. It was one of those things down in Florida, having a drink with Joe and sitting there, and he's a good guy to have in your corner. It was one of I remember our conversation. We were sitting toes in the sand and talking about, if I wanted to go into big stuff or what I wanted to do with all this. And, it's just nice to have somebody to bounce those sort of ideas about.
Yeah.
Maybe, Joe, let's give everyone a bit of an intro to who you are, and then we'll have a chat.
Yeah, I mean, sure. My name's Joe Evangelisti. I'm the CEO of Legacy Developers, and we build self-storage all over the United States, and we're in 6 states right now, about to be in 7 and 8. Wasn't always all glitz and glamour. We started out in the single-family world. We did hundreds of single-family fix and flips for many years, for almost a little over a decade. Prior to that, I was in the military for 6 years. I was actually in the U.S. Navy Seabees, which is the construction battalions of the Navy. So, and prior to that, I was, a kid growing up as a son of a general contractor. So, I mean, I've been swinging hammers since I was 2 years old. Love construction, love development, love building stuff from scratch. Just love to see a concept turn into reality. Like that's what drives me. It's just exciting. Love building great teams and, creating great relationships with people long term.
Yeah. I was thinking of going a completely different route in this, but it just popped in my head as we were just
do it, man. Right, whatever makes you feel good. Let's go.
But yeah. So you just mentioned, like, you used to do a lot of flips, right? Which is something that I still do. I'm getting into doing the multifamily as well. But I still do a lot of the flips. I know that because I know your story, that it was like an exhausting amount of work. You were an on-site guy, whereas I'm more of a remote management sort of technique to the whole thing. What has it changed in your time that you have to dedicate to the business compared to when you're doing flips to doing new construction, self-storage?
Yeah. My time personally is, so that's a great question. So it's not a matter of how much time. I think as entrepreneurs, right, I think we bullshit ourselves a lot about, I like to work 4 hours a day, 3 hours a day. Like, it's not about how much you work. It's about the control of your time that people are after, right? So like I use this analogy a lot. Like, a lot of entrepreneurs are like, man, when I hit it big, I'm going to have all the free time in the world. Okay, that's great, but for what? Like, because if you were a really hard charging A-player entrepreneur, you want to get shit done, you're not sitting on the beach for 3 weeks with a Mai Tai in your hand. Like, you would go freaking nuts. Most of us couldn't do 48 hours on the beach. Like, one day on the beach, I need to do something else engaging in my business. And then maybe I go on the yacht the next day. But like, what entrepreneurs do really well is they control their time. So I might go from, I'm in St. Thomas and I have a conference call with my team at 10 a.m. And then at 12, I'm down on the beach with my kids and I'm having lunch and I'm completely detached from work. That to me is true time freedom. It's not that you're not getting stuff done or that you have unlimited free capacity of time. But if you follow any really successful, wealthy person, they're working. They're working 24 hours a day. Their brain is working. It's actually work to detach themselves from work, if that makes sense. So a lot of the time freedom that I focus on is, okay, I have 168 hours each week. Okay. How many of them am I going to commit to Joe, to making my mindset strong, to making sure that I'm present with my family, to making sure that I can control what I can control? How many hours am I going to devote to engaging in business, helping my team, coaching, mentoring, creating joint venture partners, going to lunch and building relationships? And how much of that time am I going to control with my family, with my kids, with my wife, being present, being a good dad, being a good husband? You have to do all those things. The beauty of time control is when you get to a point where you get to control it, right? And I think that's where a lot of people feel trapped because when they're chasing that check, they're just 18, 20 hours a day. And they feel like the more time I invest, the more I'm going to get back. And the reality of it is it's not that. It's more time focused on high impact and high income events that you're a part of. And then being able to quickly detach and go move on to other things and not stay stuck. Right? Most people could be more proactive working 4 hours a day. I would actually argue more productive 4 hours a day than some of those people working 18 hours a day.
Yep. No, you said a lot of things, even like I hear from my wife, like, because I get these dreams. I'm like, I just don't want, it gets exhausting doing this business. And then I'm like, no, I just want to have it so I don't have to do anything. I'll hire all these people and kind of slowly pull everything away from myself. And she's just like, you think you want that, but you don't actually want that. And you actually, as soon as you have like a break, like you have nothing on the go, like say you had, if you finish up enough projects where you're just down to a lower level, you need to fill it up. You can't stop. You can't sit there. So you mentioned you had a team, and I know that you've been very successful with this. What a lot of these things are like underwriting, finding, like I know with because I've listened to some other self-storage people, or some of them are your students. So I've listened to them talk about self-storage several times, and just watching the underwriting that's involved in just the land, just to make sure that it's going to work for the area. What parts of this, I'm assuming you're having someone else doing all this underwriting, all this evaluation. What parts of this do you still do after?
Reality, none of it. I mean, the parts where they need me to help them, I jump in and I help them. But I mean, so as an entrepreneur, I also believe that you should be able to do most of your business, but you also need to be able to hire people that are better than you in certain parts of your. There should be certain, parts of your business where that person that you're going to is literally teaching you a better method to underwrite, a better method to make offers, a better method to negotiate with sellers. And I have some of those people right now, which I'm super, super grateful for. And then I have some of those people that I'm training to do that because of my, 2 decades of experience talking and negotiating and creative financing and all that kind of stuff. So I think there's a happy balance there. Going back to what you were just saying, kind of relating to the same question.
Yeah.
I think time management also is doing what you're most passionate about, which is really your unique ability, and the acquisitions, underwriting, direct to seller, creative financing, that's what I love, man. So like when you put deals on a whiteboard and you're like, all right, how do we creatively figure this out? The guy wants $8 million for his dirt. It's worth $6 million. He has no mortgage. We could build XYZ on this thing. We, corner lot, parse it out, entitlements. I love that shit. Like to me, that's like a Rubik's Cube. I got to figure out how to solve, and I get into it. Right. So that's the kind of that's part of the business I have to stay away from, because I'll get in there and I'll mess people's minds up. So I have to like give them the tools and let them run with it. But then when I step in there, sometimes I'm like, dude, why didn't we offer on this? And why didn't we buy this? And why? So I have to be really cautious about me getting too passionate about certain pieces. But no, I think the piece is, teach them, give them enough tools to be successful at that role that they're doing without overwhelming them. And, I think we tend, as entrepreneurs too, we tend to teach people 100 different things that don't actually impact their business or what they do. And that ends up slowing them down more than speeding them up, if that makes sense too. So we have to be really cautious about how we do that.
Oh yeah, and if you're holding their hand and checking on them all the time, then that's what they're going to expect from you. If you give people the freedom, then they'll run with it themselves.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah. And so if you're in this sort of role now where you have someone else doing a lot of this and you're more focused on like, the coaching and parts where your face actually has to be there. Like how do you grow this? Like what is the next step? Like you always hear like, the Grant Cardone's, 10x this every year. Like, how do you, as a visionary or the entrepreneur of the business, like what is your goals? Like how do you make this bigger? Like what is the next step? Where am I going to see Joe if I interview him in like 5 years? Like what do we see this we're going to? Hello, everybody. Thanks for listening to the podcast. I just wanted to let you know that I've created a new coaching program. I believe the new coaching program has way more value than any of the programs that have even existed in the past. What we've done is pre-recorded all the lessons so that you can work through it at your own pace, which is pretty cool. And then we're going to meet up on a regular basis to answer the questions, do deal analysis, and actually spend our time together working on things instead of spending our time learning things. I think this will make a seamless transition to buying in the United States and will help you solve a lot of your problems. If this is of interest to you, go to glensutherland.com/coaching. I hope to help you guys invest in the United States, and I hope we provide as much value as possible. Back to the podcast.
So my biggest challenge, a lot of people would probably, I'm going to get a lot of hate for this answer, but a lot of people introspectively are going to agree. My biggest challenge is patience. Like, I want to 10x everything. I want to build 100 self-storage. And so one thing that I've had to learn in the last 5 years is in the residential world, it's volume, right? Because it's like I'm flipping houses, I'm making 50 grand. Dude, 50 grand is not what it used to be, right? You can barely buy anything with that, let alone pay your payroll and overhead. Like, you need to do volume. So it's like next. When you get into $25-30 million projects that we're doing now, right, it's really easy to just be like, okay, next. But what you have to do is slow down in order to speed up, right? You have to take inventory of what you have. How do I get it across the finish line? How do I make it a successful deal? Who are all the stakeholders in the deal? I have investors, I have partners, I have subcontractors. I have all these people I have to make sure not only stay happy, but we do a good job so that they come back again and do it again with us in the future. I'm constantly building relationships and rapport with different folks. So for us, for me personally, my biggest challenge is patience, right? Because I just want to go buy 10 more projects, and I had to really do an introspective in the last couple of years and saying, like, look, you don't need to do. First of all, it'd be really, really difficult to do 20 or 30 deals a year. You don't need to do that in this business. You need to do 5 to 10 really good deals. Right. You make more money than you can spend. So what we need to do is slow down and really cherry pick who are the right relationships we want to build with, who do we want to develop with, who we want to buy. Like some of these sellers, for example, I mean, you get a hold of one or two of these sellers, they might own 500 acres in a certain place. Do we spend time with that person, or do we keep chasing, 5 more deals that might add up to the same thing? So you have to really be patient and cautious about what moves you're making. Versus, I think the single family world, I'm not knocking because I did it for years. I love it. The single family world, it's run and gun. It's faster. You can afford to make mistakes because you're going to buy 5-10 houses a month. One of those is going to go bad. One of them is going to hit a grand slam. So like it's just a volume business. Yep. We're not in the volume business anymore. We got to be very cautious because in my world, I could buy 5 deals. One of them could go bad and I could never do a deal again. And that's got to be the rule of thumb is be patient. Be cautious, be thorough, and you're still going to make mistakes, but you got to watch your downside.
So, if I got this right, so you're focusing on working with, like, say, construction groups that have do what they say they're going to do, perform on the timelines they're supposed to do, and do fewer projects to make a lot more money, and just having a lot more focus and slowing it down. So, if you're used to, like, you came from a similar background where you're running and gunning and speeding, how do you slow yourself down? That's
the trick, dude. When you find the answer to that, do me a favor and send me an email and just give me a dissertation on how to do it. No, seriously, it's a lot of mental game, man. It's a lot of meditation. It's a lot of focus. It's a lot of presence. It's a lot of journaling. For a lot of folks, it's going to sound like a bunch of woo-woo shit that they're like, no, I would never do that. But until you're in this space where you do have some free time with your thoughts can be some of the most dangerous things in the world, especially as an entrepreneur, because when you have something going well, what do we tend to do? We don't even realize we're doing it. We have these thoughts in the shower and we're like, man, this would be awesome. And then what do? We have verbal diarrhea. We jump out of the shower, we get on our cell phone, we start texting the whole team. We're like, we should do this, we should do that, we could do this, we could launch rockets to the moon. And the problem is we are cursed as visionaries because we have 100 ideas a minute. And 10 out of 100 are the greatest idea we've ever had. Okay. And so when you have a really good functioning business and it's running in the right direction and the operations are strong and you are creating revenue and you have an end goal and your people are in alignment, sometimes your vision is the most poisonous thing that can happen. Now, let me correct myself. When you have a crystal clear vision and you stick to it consistently over the course of years, that's perfect. But when you change your vision on a weekly basis, that's so disruptive. You can't create a culture. You can't create a business. You can't create an outcome for yourself. And that's where I think a lot of people go wrong, is they're constantly reinventing the wheel. Don't get me wrong. I think you have to pivot. You have to know how to course correct. You have to make sure you're constantly going towards the revenue and you're doing the right thing. The markets are going to change. But if you wake up one day and you're making Corvettes on an assembly line, and the next day you decide I'm going to make airplanes, and you just snap your finger and go, we have all the parts, we have all the pieces, we have all the metal, we have all the screws. There's no reason we can't make airplanes. Dude, you're going to have an upheaval on your hands, because everyone on the assembly line is going to go, yeah, you're right, but we don't know how the hell to make airplanes. And that's where vision goes sideways, right? And it's really risky.
Yeah, it's an interesting thought too. It's just like how to, yeah, I do the same thing with when I'm interviewing contractors, is asking them what they're actually comfortable with doing, and trying to push them past where they can actually go, because otherwise you're gonna get stuff, that's rent ready instead of flip ready, results at the end.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Because that's what their background is. So what do you do with your time? So if you've been working on this, taking stuff off your plate, and then you're now going to, you mentioned some of the things you're going to do, some meditation, get your mindset right. Like even myself, I've been setting time apart to, just go for a walk, think, not quite as same as yours with the true meditation, but just get my thoughts together so I'm, make more rational thoughts or more rational decisions, and as I'm going. But like, say you got this to a good spot and you have, your time managed, and you've freed yourself. You have the business people are doing what they're supposed to, or sorry, your employees are doing what they're supposed to do. Like, what do you do? Like, is that the spot where you start another business, or what do you do with that time? Because, we're both the kind of bodies that need to be active.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm kind of there now in a lot of ways. I'm not saying that to brag, or I'm, trying to be humble, but I do have way too much free time on my hands right now. Like the way the business is built, we have the acquisitions, we have dispositions, we have development teams. Like we buy something, they don't need me. They can go build it. Like as long as the capital's in place, partners are already there. Like they don't need me. So really, where I spend a lot of my time today is relationships. That's all I focus on, is relationships. Who am I building with? Who am I growing with? Who do I need to know that I don't know already? Who's going to help us get to the next level? Because we are in a business, again, there's big numbers, it's big deals, there's big things that are involved. It's not like, in the single family world where, we were borrowing a couple $1 million for, private lending and flipping houses. Now it's like, now we're going from, we own 80 million to 200 million to, if I build 5 of these a year, that's effectively $120 million worth of real estate every year. So like, that's a lot to figure out. You need the right partnerships. You need the right access to capital. You need the right relationships to know how to create the debt stack, the capital stack. You need the right relationships to go find those deals. And so it's just constant, building those relationships, and who do I need to know, and opening doors. And, I think as an entrepreneur, again, I will say, in this time when adversity starts to hit us, it's very easy to bury your head in the sand and say, there's no outlets. There's no way we can fix things. The sky is falling. But the reality of it is, that's when you have to double down. And that's when you have to have these conversations. And maybe they're tough conversations, and maybe they're, just getting you out of your comfort zone. But the more you can communicate what you need, and you can also bring value to others, which is really the key part, right? Because you can ask for what you want all day long, but if you're not finding ways to connect the dots for other people, you're not going to get it, right? So I'm trying to constantly think of like, how can I create that relationship, and is it meaningful to the person I'm trying to create it with, right? Because if I'm just entering a relationship to take, then it's not going to work out for the long haul. But if I'm bringing real value, the joint venture partner, for example, if I know, and I do know this, that my team is one of the best in the country at finding off-market opportunities, the best in the country at underwriting these deals to make sure they have a great chance of success, and we're finding stuff that other people aren't, then that's a value I bring. And if I'm talking to someone who has a huge checkbook that wants to partner on that deal, what are they looking for? They're looking for guys like me. They don't have that team.
Yeah.
Right. They might have made their business in tech, or they made their business as a surgeon or whatever. They don't know how to find off-market real estate opportunities. That's not a thing that's even in their playbook. Right. It'd be like, a brain surgeon teaching you where to cut. You're like, I don't know what I'm doing. Right. So same concept. We bring true value. I want to find people that bring the opposite value, and we can connect and we can create bigger things together.
Yeah. And so if you're spending a lot of your time like doing the meeting the business of people,
Yep.
which is honestly one of the hardest parts to replace yourself in because certain parts do need your face or your negotiation. Um, is there a lot of travel involved in that, or do you get to stay at home, or are you off on the road?
Man, I wish there was more travel involved. You know how many Zoom calls a week I'm on? This Zoom thing is taking over the world. I mean,
Yeah.
it's nice that it's convenient and we can hop on a call and we can meet people all over the United States. But I am definitely a face-to-face guy. I generally, when I start to build these relationships and I start to get to a certain place where we've connected the dots a few times, we've made some different introductions for each other. I'm definitely getting on a plane and I'm meeting somebody. I think that it's very, very important that we learn to know each other at a little bit of a deeper level than just the surface of you do this and I do that and let's go. I think it's like you mentioned at the beginning of the call, like how did we really get to know it? It was toes in the sand, drink in our hand, let's sit outside, talk about life, talk about business. That's rapport. Like, and I don't do that because I'm waiting for Glenn to send me money. Like, you know what I mean? Like that was years ago. Like it's not a one for one. It's a constant help, help, help. And then the universe will send back that help tenfold in some other direction, and I really believe in that.
Yeah, and so these people that you're meeting, are they the sellers, or is your team dealing with all like the sellers of the land, or are you built the
Could
one
be.
building the rapport with them?
No, it could be the sellers. Yeah, I've definitely met and spoken with a lot of sellers. I'm currently talking to a lot of sellers, even though my team's negotiating with them. And then, we're talking private equity firms, joint venture partners, the money side of things. I'm definitely the front man on that side of things, talking to, the people that bring the debt and equity to the deal to make it happen. Again, this is stuff that I didn't even know 4 years ago. Again, single family flip, I just would go to my uncle borrow 100 grand, flip a house. Now it's like this is a whole different level of conversation. Now it's talking to, strategic partners and family offices and things that I never thought I would be involved in. But, honestly, when you get to building bigger stuff, you need bigger connections. Your mom and pop isn't necessarily going to fund something like what we got going on. But it's okay. I embrace it. It's interesting to me, and it's funny. I say this all the time, and this is kind of what we coach about now when people want to get into commercial, is like it's overwhelming at first, it's scary at first, and I don't try to talk anyone out of residential. I think you need all of it, right? I think if you have the skill set, you should be creating what I call a cash flow trifecta, which we can talk about in a minute. But essentially, in the commercial world, the numbers are 10 times as big. It's actually easier in a lot of ways. It's crazy. It's like it's easier to get a commercial loan on these deals than it is to get a refinance on your house in certain instances. And like, so it's like, but it's just because you're in the conversation and the rooms are different. You're underwriting the deal, not the person. Right.
Right.
That's the other thing people don't think about is like, if you find the right deal, the deal is the deal. You could be in it, you could be out it, you could have a piece of it, you might not have a piece of it. Like there's so many different ways you can play with these bigger deals. Like I said, if you're in the wholesale or the single family fix and flip, try selling a fix and flip to somebody and saying, I'm going to sell it to you for X amount of dollars and I'm going to retain 10% equity. It's never happened, right? Why doesn't it happen? It's because it's somebody's primary house and they're getting a mortgage on it. They can't do that. That doesn't work that way. Commercially, every commercial piece of real estate you've ever looked at, well, 90% of them are owned by multiple people. Very few people one-off own one piece of commercial real estate. Maybe if it's their office or something like that. But real estate investors, they group together. They find partners. They go out and they expand, usually in groups or syndications or something along those lines. So it's very common for people to keep a piece of a deal or sell a piece of a deal and have some equity on the backside. And that stuff adds up fast. And that's the difference, I think, between commercial and residential.
Yeah, and you just mentioned like at the start of that was that making bigger connections and talking to people with larger amounts of money, like some of the family offices and such like that. As you're growing, how do you transition? How do you find these people? Is it going to certain places, certain events, or is it like a pay to play, or how did you transition into from raising a couple 100,000 for a flip or to going and raising a couple million from somebody?
Yeah, I mean, I 100% attribute it to different rooms that I've been in. I mean, how did me and you meet each other? We met each other at a paid mastermind event that you paid to come down. I was a speaker I think at that time, and like me speaking at events, investing to go to those type of events, paying for 2-day events, seminars, masterminds. I've been involved in those for over 10 years, and I quit doing the math a long time ago, but a long time ago, I had invested over $500,000 in my personal development a long time ago. I'm probably over $1 million by now. And again, I don't say that to brag. I say it because I believe in it wholeheartedly that when you pay to get in those rooms, the only people that fail are the ones that don't proactively build relationships. If you pay someone 5 grand, 10 grand to go to an event and you leave there and you got nothing out of it, unless that speaker was the absolute worst speaker on earth, it's probably your fault because you're in a room full of people who paid 10 grand to be there. Therefore, you're self-selecting, right? Now it's your job to build rapport. It's your job to build relationships. It's your job to meet people, find out about what they got going on, learn their business, try to create value, connect the dots, make connections. So I'm always asking questions like, well, who do you need to know? And who can I help you meet? And the irony of that question is I think a lot of people are afraid to ask it because they're like, well, who could I connect Glenn with anyway? What is the antithesis of the question, right?
Yeah.
Don't start out thinking that way. Ask him. Because then Glenn might be like, I could really use a United States attorney. Well, that's actually somebody I can connect you with. Holy shit. I never even thought about it that way. Right. So proactively asking, you'd be amazed sometimes what people say. People say, I need to do XYZ. Oh my God, my uncle runs the power company. Let me talk to him for you. Like we all have this access to connections. It's not like we're born special or we come out of the womb with like a Rolodex or a cell phone full of contacts. Like we build these over the course of time. But if you're not proactively trying to make those connections, you're never going to be able to.
No, I totally agree. And just having like the price of the door will filter out the people that, don't have the connections, are more going to, try to say this with the proper, not to offend somebody, but they're going to take more from you than they're going to give you. Right.
Exactly. I don't know how loud this is in the background. You might have to cut this part, but my cleaning lady just started vacuuming in the other room. Can you hear that?
I don't hear it. It's good.
Okay. All right, good. So we'll keep going. As long as it doesn't annoy you. If it does, let me know. But no, you're right, man. I think a lot of people like go after. I think as long as you lead with and it's such a tough concept for people to grasp, but it's so easy. Lead with value. How can I help you? And so many people are so scarcity mindset. They're like, God, everywhere I go, I have to figure out how Glenn can help me. Just turn it around, turn it upside down, do it for a month, and you'll be absolutely amazed at the results that you get by helping others, that they start to unlock doors for you didn't even know, were available.
Yep. That's the reason I did this podcast. So we were talking before we started, and we mentioned a different person's name. I'm not going to name drop on the show, but we were talking about somebody else, and he was the one who suggested to me to start the podcast. And I said, well, I don't know how to monetize it. I don't know how people make any money doing podcasts. And he said, just go out there and just give as much value as you can on every episode. And somehow it'll come back to you and the whole thing will grow. Your business will grow, and you just start putting it out. And that's what I did. And it was friggin' hard to do that, especially at the start. We were talking to like 10 people that are listening to this thing for years. We've been doing it like 6 years, and it's grown exponentially. And how it goes. It's just give first, and it'll come around.
You know why I think these platforms are so powerful too? And of course I do my own as well, but I think it's also because the best way to build rapport with people is to ask them questions, right? So you're bringing on supposedly successful people, whatever it is that your niche that you want to see or learn more of, and then you're asking them questions. So you're automatically emboldening yourself to the guest. And now the guest feels like, wow, I like this guy. I mean, he asked me a bunch of questions about myself. So inevitably there's going to be some connections made there. And what did you invest? An hour of your time, a little bit of money on the back end, post-production and all that kind of stuff. I'm not trying to undermine the pod because there's a lot that goes into it. But the idea behind, like in other words, what I'm trying to say is, where can you get more quality per time invested with somebody who's arguably halfway around the world than hosting a podcast show and asking people about their lives?
Oh yeah, you can leverage it into whatever you like. Hey, I want to learn more about self-storage. You go get a bunch of self-storage people on and just ask them questions, right?
That's right.
Whereas if sometimes you meet them in different sort of ways, and it's a little intrusive. Whereas as a podcast, they're expecting me to ask them questions, so I get a little bit more. And some people, they wouldn't give you the time of day if you didn't have an avenue where they were going to get a few thousand listens from it.
I agree. Yeah, 100%.
Anyway, Joe. Oh, this was an amazing show. I love these ones. It gets my mind thinking. It gets me even thinking about my own business. I love to apply this stuff. How do people find you? How do people find your podcast? How do people find everything if they want to, learn more about doing self-storage.
Yeah, the podcast is the Legacy Blueprint. It's on iTunes. It's on everything, Spotify, iTunes. It's syndicated. There's going to be a lot more new podcast episodes being released here shortly. I think the last one was probably 9 or 12 months ago, but we just recorded like 6 in a row. So there'll be a lot of new stuff out here shortly. And the website is legacybuilder.coach. That's really where the Legacy Builder Real Estate Academy lives, and where we talk about all this, developing commercial, transitioning, keeping what you have. A lot of single family flippers or wholesalers think they got to like quit one thing to do the other, and I never like to teach that. I like to see people have multiple pots, multiple ways and streams of making cash flow. And I don't think anybody should convince anyone else that my way is the best way, because we're all learning, man.
Yep. No, totally agree. Well, thank you for all that. Thank you for coming on the show, Joe. And I'm sure I'll get you back on the show in maybe a year or so.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Glenn.
Thanks.
That was a nice video. Bye.